Hi everyone, welcome to our trauma recovery podcast. I'm Dolly and here with beautiful Michelle, and we bring to you trauma recovery work from the 12-step program. We share our experience, strength and hope based on the 12-step programs, and right now we're discussing the laundry list from the ACA. And today we're going to be starting with trait 3. And my name is Dolly. I'm a trauma recovery specialist and I help clients and patients for a couple decades now. I help them recover from adverse effects of childhood trauma.
Mm.
And so yeah, let's get into it. Hi Michelle, come on in.
Hi, and hello to everyone listening. My name is Michelle Wellington, and so happy to be here. I am the creator of a body of work called Integration Arts, and it really focuses on supporting people from releasing anything that's like still prevalent for them in their adulthood from their childhood trauma. So a lot of integration work, a lot of trauma healing.
Mhm.
And I'm just really excited to be here today. I'm a longtime 12-step recovery person, particularly in ACA, adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families. And let's get into the traits today. I'm not even going to spend too much time talking about myself. Let's get into what we came here for.
Yay.
So, trait 3. So I'm going to read the trait and also the flip side. And as a reminder, we're going through the laundry list traits, which is a list that the founder of ACA came up with to describe adult children or describe people who experience trauma in their childhood and it still, on a certain level, expresses itself in adulthood. So we have these 14 traits, and that's what we're doing here on this podcast, digging into them. So we have the laundry list trait. We are frightened by angry people and personal criticism.
Mhm.
And then we have the flip side, which is the integrated expression of this trait. So the flip side being once we do the healing, get through the recovery, we are able to express ourselves in more healthy ways. And so the flip side to this trait 3 is we are not automatically frightened by angry people and no
Mhm.
longer regard personal criticism as a threat.
Mhm.
So even when I read the flip side, I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, it's like a sigh of relief. Like there is hope.
There is
So,
hope.
Dolly,
Yes.
why don't you tell us a bit more about this trait?
Yeah, let's get into this trait because this is the trait that has affected my life and lives of so many of my clients. Because of how we were raised in a dysfunctional, chaotic, abusive, maybe cold, hostile home, or maybe around angry people, we were exposed to anger as an unhealthy emotion. We did
Mhm.
not see a healthy expression of anger. We did not see what anger can really be used for. We only saw that anger was used to bring anger. When we see anger, we get fearful. Anger was used to control us, so we got fearful of it. Anger was used to reject us, and our nervous system gets wired to respond to that anger because it is such a unsafe, unhealthy emotion when you grow up in a dysfunctional family.
Mhm.
When children of dysfunctional families get their definition of anger just gets really, really misconstrued. And they develop this hyper vigilance towards this emotion of anger. So whenever you witness, even as an adult child of a dysfunctional family, when you witness an angry situation or an angry person, your nervous system picks up on it, even if it's anger that is cold, even if it's just stonewalling, or if it's silent treatment, or if it's many different forms of anger. We've been exposed to all of them in childhood and we carry that in adulthood, and we have this detection radar for looking for where's the anger, where's the perceived threat in my adulthood.
Mm. Beautifully said.
Yeah, it
I,
blows. Yeah, it blows my mind how it hijacks your nervous system. Like, oh my
Yeah. So
God.
you were saying the thing about the nervous system, I was gonna just add that like anger for, people who grew up in trauma and dysfunction is a signal that
Hmm.
emotional and or physical safety is at jeopardy. So that
Yes.
makes so much sense that it's like, coded into our nervous system response. So like let's say we're at a restaurant and somebody's upset about their meal and you're at the other table and you hear them getting angry, like you can get triggered. It doesn't even have to do with you because it's
Hmm.
kind of coded in your nervous system. Like, oh, somebody's angry. I'm not safe. I'm not safe
Right.
emotionally, or I'm not safe physically. Were you
Yeah.
gonna add something to
And
that?
without you knowing, you're going to either shut down or you're
Mhm.
going to get very small, very scared, trying to hide, minimize yourself, or you're going to be like me, that person who's just like, let me help you fix
Mm.
this anger. Let me pacify you. Let's not hurt you or myself. And you know, the funny thing is, I used to say, oh, it's bad for your health. Let me help you with your anger. Let me take over the problem because this anger is bad for your health. Not
Right.
knowing that I'm doing this out of habit and compulsion because I am uncomfortable with their expression of anger because I
Totally.
didn't learn how to tolerate someone's anger and separate it from myself because someone's anger meant that repercussions were going to come to me, that if my parents, if an adult around me, caregiver got angry, I am I am fawning. I am fleeing. I am fighting. I am in a nervous system reactionary mode. And that nervous system wiring that we pick up in childhood still comes with us into adulthood. And that's the hardest part about trauma, to unwire those nervous system responses that are
Mhm.
so hardwired for generations. There are generations of women who are scared or timid or unable to speak their truth because this was hardwired in them. That if there's an angry person or if you made someone angry, you're gonna pay for it. Like, how
Mhm.
common is this scenario? If I make a father angry, I'm gonna pay for it. If I make a husband angry, I'm gonna pay for it. If I make X, right? That
Boss.
fear, oh, that fear of living in response to someone's anger is so
Yeah.
debilitating.
Yeah.
It
So
shrinks
good.
who you are.
Hmm. And, I had a thought while you were talking, how many listeners out there can relate to what Dolly just said around like you see somebody angry and you want to like either make it better or fix it or like, lessen it. And then in the process, you end up absorbing that, right?
Yes, oh my God,
You
yeah.
absorb it. It's like, oh, let me take this for you.
Mm-hmm.
And what are some of the consequences that can happen when you're doing that over and over and
Yeah.
over? You start to deplete yourself, right?
Yeah, that's you said such a good point that absorbing of the energy,
Mhm.
that's what blocks our body. That's what blocks our feelings because we absorb the angry energy, the negativity is absorbed in us. And then what do? We go home and eat a bunch to self-soothe, or we drink to numb ourselves because someone's anger made me angry or fearful, right?
Mhm.
What is the response to someone's anger? It's either I'm fearful and scared for my life,
Mhm.
hiding or fawning, minimizing, or I'm just mad, which we're going to talk about later, right? Or I'm just mad. And so I either absorb and internalize their anger, which becomes depression, which
Mhm.
gets suppressed and eats away on the inside, or I become the victimizer and angry person, which we're going to talk about later, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, so fear is a natural response to
Mhm.
someone's anger when
Right.
we don't know what a healthy anger looks like.
Right. And, if I were to just talk about how this trait, you know, has expressed itself for me, it's like that fear of the criticism or
Hmm.
the authority figure, that creates other strategies in which I avoid conflicts at all costs, or I
Yeah.
shut down when somebody
Mm-hmm.
raises their voice,
Mm-hmm.
or when I feel personally attacked or receive constructive criticism.
Yeah.
So it's like, I remember when I realized this, I was like, oh, like I haven't updated my internal system. Like I still have
Mm-hmm.
a childlike internal system, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
having a childlike response. And like I think that's like the
Yeah.
heart of, recovery from, being an adult child, moving from adult child where you're frozen in that child consciousness
Yeah.
to a full-on integrated adult. And
Mm-hmm.
so I still feel like, oh, somebody's anger or criticism is dangerous when
Yeah.
it's not actually true anymore, you know?
Yeah.
And,
Like, mm-hmm.
it's like, how does this trait, what does it look like in your daily life, right? So you could be at work and your boss offers you some feedback on a project that you've been working so hard on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not harsh feedback, but it's constructive
Yeah.
advice on how to
Mm-hmm.
make improvements, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
But for an adult child inside, the
Mm-hmm.
response can be to freeze up, your
Yeah.
heart starts to race, you start to sweat, you
Mm-hmm.
feel defensive, you feel attacked. And
Mm-hmm.
instead of seeing your feedback as helpful, your brain starts to interpret this as personal criticism. And
Yeah.
suddenly you're at work, you're overwhelmed, you're in fear, you're in the bathroom, you're in shame.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
Don't you
Why
have
do I relate to
flashbacks?
it so bad? I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
that, yes.
Here's another example, okay, of how
Mm-hmm.
this trait could express itself. So
Yeah.
you're with your friends and, somebody gets upset, they raise their voice a little bit. Now, even though their anger isn't directed at you,
Mm-hmm.
you might find yourself getting anxious, nervous system is activated, wanting to leave, escape, or maybe just like shut down and go silent.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, really trying to preserve yourself and like not have any attention on you. And so you react as though that anger that's not directed at you is a threat to your own safety. So these are
Yes.
just some like real life examples of how this trait can be expressed. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
just
that was a really good point. As adult children, one of the common things that keeps us stuck is we don't know how to differentiate between constructive criticism or a personal attack or a bully type situation, right? So we take everything as personal criticism or we let everything slide, right?
right.
Depending on how strong we're feeling or right. So the mature thing is to learn what is the difference between a personal criticism versus someone's attacking me, right?
Mhm,
Your mind body might react the same way to criticism, whether it's personal or not. It might take it negatively every single time. But
mhm,
what we gotta understand is if the speaker is giving you criticism with respect, what is
mhm,
the intention behind what they're saying? Are they following those respectful boundaries, right? Are
mhm,
they really giving you feedback with intention of growth? And maybe they're a little frustrated, a little frazzled, now, is that a personal criticism, or is this a person who has a history of personal attacks and you
mhm,
cannot trust if it's either or? So, see how your body feels, but really look at the situation as a whole and the other person and the history with other person, what their intention is, what they're going through, right? So, really, in an interdependent, in a big picture way, look at it and figure out because not every criticism is a personal attack, but
mhm.
if a criticism feels like personal attack, you got to look into it more,
Love
right?
that. Love that. I love that you brought the body in because
Mm,
that has been really crucial for me in,
mm,
trauma recovery because a lot of the trauma is stuck in the body.
totally, yeah.
And then I think also, so we talked a lot about what are some of the strategies with this trait. We're frightened, and
Hmm.
so we can shut down, we could
Hmm.
try to escape, we can,
Hmm.
freeze, fawn,
Yeah.
um, flight.
Right?
And
Yeah.
Another expression of this trait is to become the victimizer. So I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned earlier in the podcast
Mm-hmm.
that we have this other laundry list trait. Um, the flip side of this dynamic, which is we frighten people with our angry and threat of belittling criticism.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking before we started recording how Dolly and I really balance each other because like I often show up in the other laundry list trait and Dolly was saying she expresses in this laundry list trait. And so I would love for you to share, Dolly, what is your experience with this other laundry list trait, frightening people with our anger or threat of belittling criticism?
Yeah, when anger is unhealthy and explosive and scary, our inner child, even as an adult, feels lost, confused, rejected,
Mhm.
scared, right? And our adult self is just blended in with that inner child that doesn't have communication skill to stand up and speak up. Our adult self blends in and becomes that little scared child, or we could become the angry teenager. So when someone is a perceived threat, our inner child is scared and lost and goes into hiding. But what comes out is that fierce inner teenager. I'm going to lash back at you. I'm going to be just as angry or not or more. And it's because you've absorbed all that anger energy. You've absorbed all that angry energy, and the way your body chooses to process it is to just give it out as they can, release it the best they can, right? So when you are somebody who's a victim of anger and you're very fearful, you're codependent in a way that you fawn and you hide and you people please in order to protect yourself. The other side is you become the aggressor, you become
Yeah.
larger than life, right?
Mhm.
And your inner teen and your inner critic takes over. So
Mhm.
when someone is angry, it's their inner critic telling them, "You better go out and protect yourself, or they're gonna get you. You're gonna be done the same you were done with when you were 5 years old." Right?
Mhm.
So their inner child is so deeply scared that it's not nowhere to be found. Their adult is blended in, and but very much with the blended in with the inner angry inner teenager, and blended in with the inner critic and acting outwardly, right?
Mhm.
It's the same thing. Both parties have absorbed the same anger, they're just processing it differently,
Oh, so
right?
brilliantly said. Yeah, it's like it's all the same energy. It comes out differently. And you know, you mentioned something about, you talked a lot about this like inner child that is gone into hiding, is petrified, is
Mm-hmm.
paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
And we get in touch with that feeling of powerlessness with that inner child. And so this anger is like protection, right? And I love how you brought in that inner critic and that inner teen or inner adolescent. They come together.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of beautifully sad thing is that the inner teenager in a way is acting like the adult.
Yeah.
A part
Mm-hmm.
of the recovery is also teaching that inner teenager to be a teenager. Hey,
Right.
you don't have to handle this.
Yeah.
I'm the integrated adult. I got
Yes.
this, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so, but that teen is just like, I got the anger, like I hold the
Mm-hmm.
boundaries for the family, and like
Mm-hmm.
if you can't beat them, overpower them, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, in everyday life, what might this other laundry list like look like? You're in a disagreement with your partner, and instead of calmly expressing your feelings, you
Mm-hmm.
start raising your voice too. You get as
Yeah.
big, you try to get big. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
you even say something harsh or cutting or something you know will sting because
Mm-hmm.
deep down you're scared of being
Mm-hmm.
hurt or rejected
Yeah.
first. And another sort of relatable example is, maybe somebody close to you does something that bothers you.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of addressing it directly, you make passive aggressive or sarcastic comments that belittle them and
Mm-hmm.
put them down. And so you do this to feel like you're in control. Because a lot
Yes.
of this
Oh
is
my God.
about the
Yes.
control piece.
Yes.
As
Yes.
children
Yes.
growing up in
Mm-hmm.
these families, we we're disempowered and we felt really out of control. And
Yeah.
that's what anger can give us sometimes, this false sense of control and power.
Power.
And so this friend did something that felt disempowering, and so you disempower them back,
Right. Yeah.
at the expense of their feelings. And so these are just some ways that this could be expressed in our everyday life.
Yeah, because all we're trying to do is diffuse that uncomfortable negative energy from our body, from our psyche, and we want to release the bondages of our inner child, the sadness of our inner child, the fear of our inner critic, and the anger of our inner teenager. When
Mhm.
we are raised by people or we're around people who are angry, we absorb their energy and we act out in anger and we become the victimizer, like you're saying. We might bully somebody, we might overpower them, we might set up dynamics where we're untouchable. Don't I'm above all, and we keep everybody else at a distance. We don't want to let them get too close to us or see the real us, right?
Mhm.
So we use anger in still an unhealthy way to keep this image of I'm going to scare you, you better not mess with me, right?
Mhm.
But it's still, all of this is very painful. It's very dysfunctional and it's very immature, and it keeps the suffering going. So you're
Mhm.
essentially keeping the same cycle going by responding to situations with anger in an unhealthy manner still,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So what can we do, Dolly? Is there like another way to show up, or are we just like doomed to this existence? Tell me about it.
Right? So, what can we do to heal from first the fear of anger, right?
Mhm.
So, first we have to see, first order of business really in healing is to secure present moment safety. You
Mhm.
have to feel safe in your body and in your circumstance, in your situation, so that you can really attune yourself to your fear, to your anger, to all the injustices that were done to you. To be really present with yourself, you have to cultivate safety in your
Mhm.
mind, body, and soul, and then go inward. Look at, why am I feeling this way, right?
Mhm.
Acknowledge that pain, acknowledge the anger, acknowledge the fear, but then find the root cause of, where did this come from? In my family chart, who else had anger or that they express around me in an unhealthy manner? Where
Mhm.
did I learn this unhealthy expression of anger and chose to become the aggressor, or chose to become the victim so I could people please and fix the angry people, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
once you see this dysfunction, you cannot unsee it,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Once you see this is the way I act, then you just can't go back to closing your eyes. So that's the first step. You
Mhm.
become aware to your behavioral patterns. You attune to your inner landscape and your outer present moment, and you cultivate safety and awareness. Right?
Mhm.
What do you think? Right? Coming to.
I agree 100% with that. 100%. And we talked about earlier in the podcast, it's like we have these traits and these flip side traits, right? So
Mhm.
we are not automatically frightened by angry people and no longer regard personal criticism as a threat. And so that seems pretty basic, but what you just described, Dolly, is the pathway to that. And what I really heard you say was like the safety piece, cultivating a sense of safety in the body, in the mind, with that, the inner family and the emotional work. And then you
Yeah.
said soul, your spirit, your
Mhm.
spiritual safety, because so many of us are, essentially spiritually damaged from
Mhm.
trauma, right? And so, like, what does that actually mean? You know, we all it is our right to feel connected to something bigger and to feel safe in the world,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Beyond our biological parents, right? Like
Mhm.
it is like our right to have that relationship. And when you grow up in trauma, that breaks. That caregiver, that abusive caregiver becomes, the God or the higher power.
Mhm.
And that is where we can get spiritually damaged. And so
Mhm.
I see that safety and I see the spirituality really, really connected and also a
Beautiful.
pathway to releasing that like automatic, I'm frightened of people, I'm frightened of the world, to feel that groundedness and that safety within yourself. That is absolutely the pathway I see.
Yeah, exactly. Understand where, and then you understand where does this fear come from? What is the wounding? You
Mhm,
separate yourself. This is my inner child. This is the angry inner teenager. This is the inner critic telling me to go fix the anger so I don't get hurt. This is the inner critic still acting as if I'm still in my dysfunctional family and it's my job to fix
mhm,
my father's anger or they're going to hurt me, or it's my job to go scare the brothers, or they're going to hurt me, right? Whatever situation is. So you have to unblend from all those emotions of the past and really
mhm,
sit grounded, like Michelle is saying, in your higher self. Sit
mhm,
grounded in that pure higher self, the higher power that you connect with. So once you're grounded in your higher power, which comes with practice, which comes with daily conscious contact with your higher power, right? So you connect, you once you have that solid foundation, that spiritual solid foundation, that
mhm,
unwavering faith that universe has my back, that higher power is there for me, and you walk in the light, you walk in the wisdom of the program, all the gifts start coming. You face your fear with compassion,
mhm.
right? You have so much compassion for the little dolly who had to see so many angry people around her,
Yeah,
right?
and for me, it's like compassion for the little Michelle and teenage Michelle who developed strategies to be angry and walled off and
Mm.
scary because behind all of that was
Ooh.
scared Michelle,
Yes.
young
Mm-hmm.
Michelle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just got chills when you said that. It's such
Mm.
good work. And I was also thinking about this flip side trait, you know as we're healing and what the recovery looks like is we start to not see anger as like such an intense thing where it's just another human emotion. It's
Mm.
not
Mm-hmm.
attached to like I'm about to be annihilated.
Right?
No,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, it's an emotion that is doesn't have to be destructive.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's
Yeah.
talk about anger for a second. Anger is a healthy emotion that can let
Mm-hmm.
us know my boundaries have been crossed.
Correct. Yeah.
There's some injustice happening
Mm-hmm.
and can empower you.
Mm-hmm.
But as people, adults who have unresolved trauma, the
Mm-hmm.
anger is just attached to destruction
Yeah.
and negative things. And so we get to learn that anger can just be another healthy emotion. And we can also begin to recognize that, criticism, again, isn't going to be a thing that annihilates me, but can be an opportunity for growth
Growth.
for
Yeah.
me, an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to improve myself and
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to define my worth and my value.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how this flip side trait can really be integrated.
Yeah. If you're around someone who's angry, you face your fear and you say, I feel so scared. This person is about to erupt, or
Mhm,
they're about to be really volatile, or right. So then you choose, okay, how you have to know beforehand, what do I do when I face unhealthy expression of anger, because I have a history with dealing with anger or being around unhealthy anger, and it affects my health or it affects my nervous system. So be prepared. Just like everything else, like, right? I'm going to go out, my blood sugar is going to go up and down. I better take my medication, right? Similarly, if I am going to go out, there's going to be angry people. Like, right? There's going to be somebody in the, so what, how are you going to soothe yourself? How are you going to show yourself compassion and talk to that inner child and
mhm.
soothe and navigate such situations?
Yeah.
And practicing staying grounded in your higher self and in God is really the first step,
Mhm.
especially
Yeah.
with anger. Especially with fear. Fear is so hardwired that you really have to sit with God in order to even face the fear. and then
Mhm.
face the fear through a storm that's going on around you if someone is exploding, right? And then practicing healthy expression of anger, fear, and fear. I mean, not it's a healthy expression of anger is so important. And even expressing that you're scared and fear,
Yeah, I was
that's
gonna
so
say.
important. I remember I had this really huge client, like patient, and he was on a hold, like 72-hour psychiatric hold, and I needed to give him medication, and he was so scary, and he was very angry at the world, and he
Mhm.
wanted to hurt everything. And I was so scared, and I looked at him and I said, your anger, I really want to connect with you, but your anger, you're so angry at the world and it's scaring me.
Mm.
Just labeling and mentioning his anger just softened him so much, because he realized he didn't have to be like that in every minute, every, right? The inner teenager, when it's feeling it, it's really ramped up. It gets really angry.
Mhm. And I think this is actually such a great segue into what the flip side of the other laundry list is. So you're talking about this patient that was like, angry, intimidating, angry. So this flip side of the other laundry list is we are renewed with our renewed sense of self-worth
Hmm.
and self-esteem. We realize it is no longer necessary to protect ourselves by intimidating others with contempt, ridicule, and anger. Boom.
Hmm.
Like that, and I really relate to the other laundry list. So like moving into this integrated place has been really huge for me. And
Hmm.
notice how it says, a renewed sense of self-worth, because that's connected to the fear. A renewed
Hmm.
sense of self-esteem, that's connected to the fear and the abuse and how our sense of self was eroded through our childhood experiences. So the more we, as you were sharing, grow safety within our own bodies,
Hmm.
develop a relationship with something greater than ourselves, you know, be in our higher self with more consistency, we build up that self-worth, we build up
Yes.
that self-esteem. And then it's like, oh, I don't need this tool in my toolbox anymore
Yeah.
to help me feel,
Yeah.
safe and good in the world because I have
Exactly.
other ways to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't have to use
Facing
contempt, ridicule.
facing angry people, facing scary people, it's a skill that you can build up. It's a
Yeah.
skill and a practice that we didn't get when we were younger. We didn't learn how to deal with healthy anger, or we didn't learn how to deal with anger, period, right? We
Mhm.
developed our own coping mechanisms, but now we can learn how to how to navigate our own internal pain and hurt, so it doesn't hurt others, so it doesn't
Mhm.
spill out.
Yep.
And we learn how to healthily express anger with patience, right?
Right.
You've got to have patience is one thing that we have to slowly develop, because as an adult you want to be able to do these things much easier. You don't want to
Yeah.
be scared of, another adult.
Yeah. And then also like I love that you said that. At a certain point in your recovery, this starts to become a bit more automated. Like in the
Hmm.
beginning, you kind of have to work at shifting these patterns because they
Yeah.
are so deeply ingrained. And eventually it becomes more automatic. So let's say you're having a disagreement.
Yeah.
And automatically, instead of raising your voice or making snide remarks, you
Uh-huh.
pause,
Hmm.
take a breath,
Yep.
share your feelings calmly. You don't feel the need to overpower the other person.
Hmm.
You trust that you can stand up for yourself. Your inner children can trust you
Hmm.
as the
Yeah.
adult. They don't have to grab the wheel in a disagreement.
Right. Yeah.
They don't have to
Yeah.
tear anybody down.
Yeah.
Or where you're feeling, insecure about something in your personal life. And instead of criticizing someone to make yourself feel better or like judge or gossip or whatever,
Hmm. Hmm.
you check in with your own feelings and you check in with your inner children. Hey, how's it going in there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Feeling just
Yeah.
becomes more automated, acknowledging your own vulnerability and choosing to respond with kindness instead of anger.
Hmm.
So, like, these are
Yeah.
ways that it becomes more integrated and automated.
Yeah.
And I am just like so grateful to like know that this way exists,
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
can move towards this. And it's not perfect every day, you know, sometimes I slip up.
Mm-hmm.
Just knowing that this is the integrated path, this
Mm.
is the new way. I don't have to live in these traits that cause me so much suffering.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, just explore anger, explore fear. What is your perception of anger? How much can you tolerate? How can you create safety and groundedness in your life so when the storm hits, you stay grounded in your higher self and you're able to navigate an angry person without getting affected by them, without getting sucked into their energy and without getting swept by their anger, without getting engulfed by that fear. So once you have a solid foundation of who you are and your relationship with anger and fear, and you've prepared how you're going to handle an aggressive person or a loud person, or, really about getting to know yourself and how you want to handle things and do things. And then you practice it,
Mhm.
right? You practice it, like Michelle's saying, you pause and practice and you go back and you make adjustments and you use your emotional regulation techniques and
Yeah.
right. So you kind of put on those, I hate to say the big girl panties, and you're kind of like,
I
I'm
know, I'm not
I don't
either.
like that phrase,
Yeah,
but
what else could it be? You or just you step up. You step up.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You just step up and take your higher self takes charge more and more in your life. And that is how you release these traits and live life as an integrated self.
Mm, beautiful. Yeah, I always feel so good at the towards the end of these episodes because like,
Mhm.
oh, so in the solution. There's so much hope. So if you're out there listening, at least the first half of this podcast, you're like, whoa, that is definitely me. I've experienced those things. You are not alone. And
Mhm.
just know like the purpose of this us coming together and doing this podcast really is to let you know like there's a way. There's
Yeah.
a totally amazing way of living and operating in your relationships that can be so much better.
Yeah, we wish you the same emotional sobriety and emotional maturity and just freedom from these traits, like so many of us have found by doing the work.
Mhm.
So are we feeling complete?
Yeah,
Are
that
we?
feels really complete. That was a great episode. I feel so
Yeah.
filled up from it.
Yeah,
So,
great discussion. I hope the listeners and viewers also feel filled up and feel that there's hope and experience and strength in what we're talking about. So
yeah.
until next time, are we about to say bye?
Yeah.
All
Say
righty, we'll
bye. See you next time.
see you next time. Bye.